Welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2238. This week we're doing in memoriam shows, guests that we've lost in 2022. On Friday, I'll do a recap of all 10 of these people that made a great influence on my life and hopefully yours. Today is a replay of my talk with Tony Dow. Now, when I started the Cars Yeah podcast, if you told me I'd be talking to someone who was a TV star from when I was a little kid on Leave It To Beaver, I would have said, what? But turns out Tony is quite the car guy. So sit back and enjoy this talk with him. Great memories. And of course, the reruns of Leave It To Beaver continue to this day. So Tony's presence is felt all over the world. Enjoy. Today, I'm taking a little trip back to my youth. We're going to have some fun.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. I'm revved up and very excited to share with you today a very special guest calling in from a beautiful part of California, Topanga Canyon, Tony Dow. Hey, Tony, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I hear. I'm expecting it.
Yep, we're going to have some fun. Well, listen, before I do a proper introduction, as if you need one, I'm going to ask you something that maybe not too many people have asked you.
Good.
Would you share something with us that most people may not know about you?
How about, this isn't a good one, but I have a terrible temper, but not with other people. I'm very, very level and never get upset about anything, but when the wrench doesn't fit on the nut or when the hammer doesn't hit the nail, that can get me angry.
Well, that's where you let out your frustrations.
Right.
I know we're going to talk about your creative talents as an artist. And let me ask you this, because my father was an architect, an artist, and a painter, and he also did a lot of sculptures, some in wood like you do. But I know that my dad was very even-keeled too. But whenever he was working, he built a lot of things being an architect and contractor. He would get a little angry with that. So do you think that's because you're such a even-keeled, calm person? That's where you let your anger out when you got to?
You know, I bet that's probably true because my wife, she gets angry right away, and then she gets over it within about 2 minutes. She's fine and back to normal.
Yeah.
Where I can hold it in, which is not a good thing.
No, well, it's a typical man thing. I think we all tend to hold in our feelings, and it's
Feeling, yeah.
It is not healthy, that's for sure. So next time, just let it out, Tony. Just let it out. Of course, Lauren's not going to like that very much. You'll just say, Mark told me to let it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And she'll give me a call. Well, listen, let me give you a proper introduction, and then we're going to jump into some questions I have for you today. Tony Dow is a film producer, director, television actor, sculptor, and a lifelong automotive enthusiast. You'll remember him for his role in the television sitcom Leave It To Beaver that ran on primetime from 1957 to 1963. Tony, of course, played Wally Cleaver, the eldest son of June and Ward, and the wise old brother of Theodore Beaver Cleaver. He's appeared in numerous television shows since, and then he has also been honored by the Young Artist Foundation and its former Childhood Star Lifetime Achievement Award. His creative talents, though, go far beyond the screen, and Tony has created wood and bronze sculptures for many, many years. His work has been on display in exhibitions in many venues, including the Carousel du Louvre. Past Cars Yeah guest Fireball Tim has created his newest automotive coloring book that's titled The Official Tony Dow Coloring Book. How cool is that? Has anyone ever done a coloring book about you, Tony?
I never even thought of it. No. And I probably would have said no if they had. But since Tim, or Fireball, is, I like to call him Speed Bump, but he doesn't like that. Anyway, he's a friend, and obviously he does these wonderful coloring books, mostly automotive.
Yeah.
And he suggested it, and I thought, well, what the heck, go ahead, do it. Let's do it. So
Speed bump. I'm going to have to get him with that next time I talk to him. He's going to probably go, "You've been talking to Tony, haven't you?"
yeah, that could be.
Yeah, I like that. Well, listen, listeners, we're going to be back in a moment to talk more with Tony, bring back a little bit of my childhood here. But first, a word from our very valued sponsors. They're the one that make this show possible. So give them a little love, give them a listen, and we'll be right back. So keep your seatbelt on. Do you have a pet in your household that loves to go for a ride? Our pets are part of our families, but they can be very hard on your vehicle's interior. Well, Covercraft has you covered. They offer a wide variety of solutions to protect your vehicle's interiors from Fido's rough treatment. Canine cargo area covers are padded for comfort and provide door-to-door protection. Pet pads have built-in features to keep cargo areas and seats protected. Covercraft solutions cover cargo areas, bucket or bench seats, and protect from damaging claws, pet fur, hair, mud, moisture, and that occasional drool from permanently damaging your vehicle's delicate surfaces. Choose from a variety of styles and colors that cover almost every vehicle made. Is your dog getting a little old? Covercraft even has a pet ramp so your trusted companion can get himself into and out of your vehicle. Here's something special to you from me at Cars Yeah. If you go to covercraft.com and use the code YEAH120, YEAH120, you get 10% off your Covercraft order. Go to covercraft.com today and use the code YEAH120 and you'll get this special 10% off. Tell Fido it's from me. That's covercraft.com. Use YEAH120 at checkout. Covercraft, they've got you covered. Woof. American Collectors Insurance. Are you insuring your classic vehicles on your regular daily driver auto policy? Then your special vehicles are at risk. Your regular auto insurance carrier won't tell you how much you'll get until after a claim, and more than likely, you'll be in for a rude awakening. With agreed value policy from American Collectors Insurance, you'll be paid your vehicle's full agreed value. No surprises. If you're driving your collector car less than 5,000 miles a year, do what I did. Call American Collectors Insurance and get your very own agreed value policy tailored to your specific vehicle. If you're like me, you're picky about who works on your special ride. A great policy allows you to choose your repair shop of choice, and that means you'll know the job is done right. I shopped around and decided to protect my car with American Collectors Insurance. They've been protecting vehicles since 1976. Give them a call for a quote today at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love. I did at American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Cheers. All right, Tony, we are back. As I always start this journey with all of my guests, I always ask for a success quote or a mantra, some kind of saying that's been a part of your life, perhaps. Maybe it's a quote from somebody, or maybe it's just a way that you go through life. It's a nice way to get the inspirational tires spinning a little bit here on Cars Yeah. I know you love cars, you love to drive, so Tony, take the wheel.
Okay, well, this might not be a car-related thing, but I've always thought that it's better to be quiet and thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. But I'm not sure that's served me very well, because that's made me sort of quiet about things. I listen very well. I listen to things and I come up with a comment, but, you know, it doesn't seem to have much impact. So my comment, that is.
Well, I wouldn't say about that, but you know what, Tony? I think people that are thoughtful listeners are probably some of the most powerful and well thought through people in the world. There's a great book by Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of my favorite books. And the 5th habit is this: first listen to understand, then speak to be understood. Because would you not agree today, too many people are very quick to respond and not really listen to what the other person has to say?
Well, you know, and we live in this really crazy internet age where the social media is, goes wild, and so anybody can really say anything they want. And of course, people are, they're quick to take up concepts. So, they hear something and they think it's true, or they hear it from a friend, or a friend hears it from something else. So there's all this misinformation going around. So it's really hard to, and I've always, honesty has always been one of my biggest concerns. So with the social media the way it is, it's difficult to maintain that.
Yeah. Well, then listen to Tony Dow. Listen, be a better listener before you speak up. I think it'll serve you well. I try to be a great listener every day with all the inspiring automotive enthusiasts I get to talk to every day. Let's talk a little bit about you and what you're doing. And I was fascinated to learn more about you. Of course, most of us who are older like me have been around and we know about Leave It To Beaver. I think it's one of the longest running syndicated shows ever. Is that true? Could it be the longest running one?
I think it is. I mean, it's very bizarre because it's never been off the air since 1963 when it started running in syndication.
Yeah.
And it's played all over the world, and it's still running. Now, there's Lucy, but I Love Lucy was in a bunch of different formats, like the Lucy Show and I Love Lucy and Lucy and Desi and that sort of stuff. But a show that's had the same name, same title, same everything, same concept. I think Meet the Press is, of course, one of the oldest, but our show's been on for an awful long time.
It's incredible how long it's been running. I would assume even today, as you're out and about, people recognize you. I mean, you look very much the same. You're a very young-looking guy.
Really, thanks. but not so much. Not like they used to. But it's interesting because there's so much content on television, and there's so many different shows, and there's so many shows that are on for a year or two. And then they're off the air, and you never see them again, or whatever. So, I think that it's hard to maintain, being in an audience's mind if you're not there every week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's fascinating. I want to fast forward a little bit because I know you've worked in television over the years, but one of the things that I found intriguing about you is your love for art and the sculptures that you do. I was talking with my son who's up here visiting with me right now. He went to Rhode Island School of Design. He studied industrial design, but he loves art. I think he got that from his grandpa, my dad, who loved art. Let's talk a little bit about that because you do some very, very creative, wonderful pieces of art, sculptures in wood and bronze. Has that been something that has always been a part of your life? Did you pick that up later?
No, I mean, when I was 18, I think my parents got me a acetylene torch set up. And I started brazing copper, and so I was, brazing things out of copper, and I was doing various and sundry things. And, I made a whole town that was a coffee table that had a train running around it. And so it was always things that I was interested in. And I had a lot of pieces in these traveling art shows, like the Westwood Art Show and the Del Mar Art Show and the, La Jolla Art Show. They come along once a year. They're street shows, actually. And I had always planned, once I had time, because, I stayed pretty busy. There was a period of time after the Beaver Show when I worked pretty steadily. But then I joined the National Guard, so I was on a series, and they didn't want to lose me, I guess, so they pulled some strings, and I got on the National Guard, which actually was a 6-year
Oh, really?
obligation.
Wow.
Yeah, you have 2 years of active duty, or actually you have 6 months of active duty, and then you have 5.5 years of reserve duty. So anyway, but they didn't like long hair. That time of our period, it was when people, it was a hippie period. Everybody had long hair. Yeah. And people would always make comments like, "What's wrong with you? Are you in the army or something?" And so I had a kind of a short few years there that I didn't work much, and then after that it was money making time. I had to provide, and so I started doing some construction, and I did a lot of designing, and I would design the work that I would build. And that went on for a few years until it sort of drove me nuts. So anyway, then I had always planned that I would retire and, become an artist. So, I went through my period of, we did a new series called The New Leave It To Beaver, which we did 105 episodes of. So that took up, 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And then after that, Oh, I started directing. That's right. How can I forget that?
That little gig.
Yeah, that little thing. So, and I was directing for about, 16, 17 years. I really enjoyed directing because I'd actually studied to be a director, and I'd also studied while I was working. And I did one show that was a particularly special show that was directed by a guy named Jack Smythe, who went on to do Illustrated Man and Midway and a bunch of really big-time movies. And I really studied his technique and what he did, and he was really helpful because he talked and gave me a lot of secrets that he uses. And so anyway, finally, when I got my chance to start directing, I was over-prepared. And, I directed a bunch of shows. I directed a show called The New Lassie, which was a show that was on for a few years. And then I did a show called Swamp Thing and a show called Harry and the Hendersons. I did 5 or 6 of each of those. And then I did a cult show called with Chris Elliott. It was a pretty funny show. It had his dad and Chris Elliott, and he's sort of a offbeat comedian.
Yeah.
And then I got into doing episodic, which is all of my work had been single camera. Well, except for what did I do that was multi-camera? I did one show that was a multi-camera show, and I believed in multi-camera. I believed in 2 cameras, and I kept trying to press anytime I worked for that opportunity to have a second camera. But of course, second camera means a second camera operator and an assistant.
Expense.
Because we were talking about film back then.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got into episodic, and I started directing Babylon 5, which is one of the all-time great sci-fi series. And I did a Deep Space Nine, and I did a number of other shows that were, hour shows, which is the way movies are made, Yeah. And you get a little bit of time to talk with your DP, and you get time to talk with your construction people. Mm-hmm. So you can actually have a set designed a particular way if you need to do something with a camera that otherwise you normally wouldn't be able to do.
Nice.
So I enjoyed that whole period. Let's see, what stopped that whole thing? Oh, what stopped it was that I got sick, and I was sick for maybe a year from being able to direct. And by the time I came back, the shows that I had directed had either moved to another state or were off the air. Mm-hmm. So all the producers and everybody I knew were kind of had moved on to something else, and I decided, you know what, I'm a little tired of doing these interviews. I'd go on an interview with a guy that was maybe 28 years old, and he was probably an economics major from back east somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'd walk in and sit down, and we'd say, "Hi, how you doing?" And then he'd ask me, he said, "Have you ever done any comedy?" and I thought, well, you know what? If that's going to be the kind of thing I'm going to run into, I don't really need to do this. So that's when I started my sculpting. Yeah. And that was in 2000. Spreadsheet the other day, and I think I've done over 150 pieces.
Wow.
Sold maybe, sold 75, something like that, maybe 80, I don't know.
Well, it's fascinating, this transition through your life and going to art, but this is about cars, So I've got to ask you a little bit about your passion for cars. When Fireball connected us and he said, "Hey, I want you to do a talk with Tony." And I said, "Well, does he like cars?" And he goes, "Yeah, he likes cars. Don't worry about that." So I know you've been a bit of a car fan, and I'm going to get into those specifics in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about this coloring book, because now this is the first coloring book that you've been featured in, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, and your passion for cars, is that still a big part of your life? Is something that you've always enjoyed?
Well, after I've gotten involved with Fireball there, I do spend a lot more time at these car shows and enjoying the cars, enjoying the guys that have the cars. And I'm not much of a mechanic, but I do have a really good story about my first car. Yeah. And that was that when I was just 16, I guess, I bought I wasn't allowed to have a car, so my dad was nice enough to say, "Well, what kind of a car would you like to drive if you had the choice?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. How about a Corvair?" And so we ordered a Corvair from the factory, and it was kind of painted a midnight blue and had black interior and stuff. And it used to be funny because he would go to his jobs where he was a contractor, and he'd drive up in this lowered Corvair that had reverse chrome wheels. And I thought it was probably a pretty funny image. But I had that car throughout all my high school and all my, dating and goofing around with the guys and going to the beach and doing all the stuff that people do with their first cars. Yeah. I sold the car to this, in 1965, to this guy who was a wonderful engineer and a machinist. And I never saw the car again, nor did I see him. But what happened was he and his best friend, a guy named Marty, who it turns out played guitar with Smothers Brothers for years. But anyway, they were best buddies, and they did all the things that I did when I was a kid. With the car, all the things I mentioned. Going down the strip at night where all the cars are, and tinkering with it, and drinking beer, and So anyway, it was kind of interesting that he had that same experience with that same car. And then in '87, he did a ground-up restoration, and he went through the whole car. He put a Spider engine in it, and he anything that was hose, that was made out of rubber, he would machine a piece out of aluminum, and it was really nice looking car. It had a XKE carburetor and had a turbo, and so anyway, it went from being a car with 108 horsepower, 106 horsepower, whatever it was originally, up to like 165. I guess, which is quite a big jump. And then he had an alcohol injection system on it, and that made the horsepower jump up again to 245 horsepower. So here we have, this light little car with an engine that can push it pretty fast. So anyway, the car. What happened was the fellow died, and Marty and he had talked about, well, what are we going to do with this thing that we love so much, that we spend so much time on? And Al, who was the fellow's name, said, well, if you can find Tony Dow, why don't you give it back to him?
Oh, nice.
So that's what happened. All of a sudden, I get a call from this guy, or actually I got an email. I thought he was crazy, so I didn't really answer it. And then a few days later, I thought, well, I should probably answer that. And he said, you want your old car back? And I said, what are you talking about? And he explained the situation. And I thought about it, and I figured it might be kind of a junker. So I decided, well, I'll come down and take a look at it. And it was beautiful. It had a black lacquer paint job, and it had these fantastic aluminum wheels. I mean, it was really looked good. So anyway, I had it shipped back up to my house here and got it running. It hadn't been running for about 8 years. So I would take it around to Fireball shows, and that's so kind of integrated into that car scene. Before that, I had gone to car shows like anybody goes to car shows, but I was an enthusiast in cars because after I sold my Corvair, which I loved, I bought a Corvette, and it got stolen. Oh no! Within the first couple months, and so it went into the shop, and they couldn't get a motor for it, so they decided that they were going to put a bigger motor in it. And it was already, what do they come with, like 360 or something like that?
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, it ended up with a bigger motor, which made a little hump in the hood, which was kind of a cool feature. And so I drove that around for a few months, and then that got stolen again.
Oh, my gosh. You got to be more careful where you leave your cars, Tony.
I guess, man. I just went into in a really great place, Studio City, and went in to see a movie and came out without a car.
Oh, no.
So, and it spent days and months in the shop trying to get a new motor stuck into it. So I finally decided, well, I'm not gonna do that anymore. So I sold that, and I got actually made a mistake. I was looking at a 300 SL Gullwing, which was about $7,000 at the time.
Oh, geez. Oh, gosh, yeah. Should have bought that.
Yeah, I should have bought. Actually, I was thinking about. I'm sorry, I got screwed up a little. I was thinking about that before I bought the Corvette. I was thinking about the two cars, the Corvette, the 300 SL, the Corvette, and 300 SL is probably one of my favorite cars of all time. But the guy said, you know what, this car is pretty expensive. It costs about $300 to get a tune-up on it, and it's not as dependable as your American cars. And I said, okay, well, then I'll get the Corvette, which might have been a mistake because how much are those SLs worth now? They're probably worth
millions and millions of dollars. But we won't go into that. I've had plenty of those in my life as well as the woulda, coulda, shoulda cars. But you know what? That SL could have been stolen too if the history says the same.
The problem is, at the time, I was a car person. I loved the cars. But I didn't wash them every week or even every other day or whatever. I was a little lax with that part of the maintenance kind of thing.
Sure.
So I probably that 300 SL probably would have ended up in a junk pile somewhere.
Oh, God. Well, it's probably out there somewhere in somebody's collection. And I got a picture from Fireball of you leaning against a Corvair. Is that the actual car?
That's the actual car, yeah. It actually even has the same license plate that I had.
Oh, my gosh.
50-some years ago. Well, how long would it have been? In 19... Yeah, so
almost 60 years ago. Yeah.
60 years ago, yeah. And what's funny about it says, the frame on it says, unsafe at any speed. That was a Ralph Nader thing, where he ruined that car, unfortunately, because it was a good car. It was a great entry-level Chevrolet, and the car, my car now, it drives like a go-kart because, of course, Al put on all new suspension and sway bars and all that kind of stuff, and it has a much more powerful engine. It's literally like a go-kart. I went into Porsches after I got rid of my Corvette, and I drive up in the canyons here, and the Corvair handles much better than any of the Porsches I had.
Well, those were fascinating cars, and I loved the Monza version of the Corvair when they came out, kind of a little sportier version, but that air-cooled engine in the back, hanging off the back axle, much like a 911 or a 356, so very special cars. Well, Tony, I'm going to crawl into your mind a little bit here. I'm going to be a bit of a psychologist for you today, and I'll bet you nobody, of all the interviews you've done, and we were in our pre-show chat, Tony said, gosh, I should have kept track of how many. It's got to be hundreds and thousands of them, but I'll bet you nobody's ever asked you this. If you woke up tomorrow and you were a vehicle parked in your driveway, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself manifest as a vehicle, what would Tony Dow be and why?
Well, let's see. Let me think about that. The car I really like is and great because I'm not going to remember the name. It's the Porsche, but it's the Boxer hardtop.
Oh, the Cayman.
Cayman, yeah, the Cayman.
Yeah.
I love that car. I think that's a great-looking car.
Yeah.
And Porsche does such a great job. I mean, when I had my 65, actually it was 63, because that was the first one I had, that was the least cost to the manufacturer of any car made. So, for example, if you bought one, I think the amount that the factory had to pay for maintenance on it was something like $13. You would probably know all that stuff, but where now it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And the car was really dependable, and so I think those cars are really, really well made. But I do like the Cayman. I think I even like it better than the 911s, which
I'm right with you, Tony, and I'm a diehard 911 guy. I've had many 911s. Porsche is my mark of choice. Got a 88 turbo in my garage now that I bought about 11 years ago because I always wanted a turbo back in the 80s, but I had just been married, had a new job, new house. I couldn't afford one, so I'm kind of reliving my past here. But the Cayman to me today, I've had this talk with myself many times. I've thought, if I go walk into a Porsche dealership and buy a new Porsche today, I think it very well might be a Cayman. I just like the size. And you know what it reminds me of is the beautiful 550 Spider that, of course, James Dean is known for, driving and, of course, racing, but losing his life in. But yeah, they're beautiful cars. I think from a designer standpoint, you being a designer, I was a designer for many, many years. It just looks right. And the new Porsche has just gotten kind of big. Kind of fat, So
yeah, and of course they've been around for so damn long. We know they have that same slope back design, and they are bigger, and they're they're really fast, I guess.
Okay.
And,
Oh, yeah.
never had one, but I assume the Cayman. I've quit being fast anymore.
Well,
I'm a pretty slow driver.
It's probably safer to be that way, especially in the canyons of Topanga. There's too many wild men there.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, let me jump into what I call the last lap. I'm going to fire off some questions, have you give us some quick blips of that Cayman throttle. So here we go. Would you share one of your personal habits, Tony, that you think has been an attribute to your life and your success in life?
Well, because most of the things that have been attributes have also been things that held me back a little. But I guess perfectionism.
Yeah. Being a designer.
Yeah, and having a good eye for things. I can visualize things. So a lot of time I would visualize something and not be able to explain it as well as I should be able to, and other people wouldn't pick up on how cool that would have been. So.
Well, I'll tell you something, Tony. This morning, my son's up here visiting, as I mentioned earlier, and we Googled your name and your art, and we both were sitting there, and he's 26, so he's from a whole different generation. He goes, "This guy's really good, Dad." So really enjoy the design work that you do in your sculptures, and I'll put a link to that page for our listeners on Tony's show notes page, so you can see some of the beautiful artwork that he's created. How about this? If I could arrange for you to sit down and have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive industry, living or deceased, who would it be?
Well, probably, what was the guy that drove the Ford in the
Carroll Shelby.
Yeah, but his partner.
Ken Miles.
Yeah, Ken Miles.
Yeah.
I think he would be an interesting guy to sit down and talk to.
No doubt. It's interesting you've said that, because I really believe that movie, Ford versus Ferrari, has exposed Ken Miles in a way that he's not been exposed in the past. And I know a lot about cars and racing and history, and I've always known of him. In fact, a friend of mine, he's passed now, but he lived up in Seattle, owned a car called the Flying Shingle. It was a one-off MG that Ken Miles raced back in the day. Ken Miles seems like quite a character to me. I think he'd be wonderful to sit down with you.
Yeah, he seems like a real character, and he also, seems single-minded, and you don't want to be on the other side of the argument, I don't think.
No. I think Carroll Shelby was the only one that could maybe run with him. Old Carroll Shelby, of course, was a cantankerous guy as well. So those two make a good team.
Right.
How about the best automotive advice that someone else has ever given you? This could be about buying cars, selling cars, keeping cars. Has anyone ever given you great advice in that way?
No, actually, I got the advice from somebody that said, if you see a car that's going to last a long time, buy the first year. So that seemed like a good idea. But my problem was always being able to determine what was a car that was going to last and become a classic. So
well, it's hard to guess at the first year, right?
Right, it is.
Yeah.
But I've become my son had a friend who had the 37th car that came off the line, Tesla.
Teslas,
Roadster.
yeah.
Yeah, the Tesla Roadster. And he was so excited about it, we'd talk about it for a long time. So I became a Tesla fan about the time that first car came off.
Oh, wow.
And I've been a Tesla fan ever since, and I've fortunately got stock in it.
Oh, good for you. There you go.
Yesterday it went up $180.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible what's going on. I mean, to me, Elon Musk is an alien. What that guy has been able to pull off. How do you run 4 different huge businesses like that? I hold him in awe. And yeah, Tesla, if you bought some stock this year, early in the year, you've done quite well.
I bought it like 5 years ago.
Well, you're even smarter than the rest of us.
Well, I'd vote for Elon for president.
Yeah, I think he gets some stuff done. Yeah, he knows how to get things done. Well, how about a resource that is kind of a go-to for you? Now, this could be, maybe it's a blog you like, or it could be Fireball's vlog, which is quite fun to watch every day. This could be a person, a supplier in your life, a website that you like to go to. There's so many resources these days. Is there one in particular you'd like to share?
Well, I probably should say Fireballs. I mean, that's sort of the thing that got me back involved in cars, and But as you can tell by talking to me, I'm not a really knowledgeable nuts and bolts kind of guy, but I think it's amazing that he was doing one show a day.
I know.
And he's his vlog is
he's a machine.
Really done well. Yeah, and it's almost like yours. and so that would be a good place to go. I don't know. I kind of like motorcycles, and I've never ridden them.
Oh,
but
yeah?
We have a great book on all the motorcycles that have probably ever been made. Probably not, but, it was this huge museum show in Las Vegas.
Okay.
The show was unbelievable. It had bikes I've never even heard of, and they were all displayed on top of mirrors, so you could see all the way around the bike. And I spend time with that thing probably more than any other automotive. Actually, that's not an automotive thing, is it?
If it rolls on rubber, we love it here in cars. Yeah. So I rode motorcycles for years back in when I was a young man. We do a lot of dirt bike riding down there in Southern California and Baja California. And I did ride street bikes for a while, but I had so many friends that kept getting hit by inattentive drivers that I finally said, maybe it's time to sell my bikes and get off. I'd look at my little kids and go, I need to be around for these guys in the future.
Yeah.
But I love motorcycles. I think they're great. Well, I'll make sure to put a link on Tony's show notes page. If you haven't watched and you're not connected with Fireball Tim, and that's his real first name, Fireball, his vlog, it's really wonderful. And if you use Facebook, he does a daily half-hour talk in the mornings during the week at 8 o'clock. Very inspirational, very positive, very upbeat. Whenever I'm not recording shows, I always go onto Facebook and get to listen to him. Encourage everybody, especially during these challenging times. So, Tony, I know we talked about the official Tony Dow coloring book that Fireball Tim did, and I'm going to put a link to that so everybody could get a copy. Coloring is one of those things, even as an adult, it's a very therapeutic process. I'd encourage everybody listening to try it. It's not just for little kids. But is there another book in your life that you found real valuable that you might share with the listeners?
Well, yeah, there's a book by Robert Iger, who's the president and CEO of Disney for the past, 15 years, something like that. And it's called The Ride of a Lifetime, I think.
Yes.
Ride of a Life.
The Ride of a Lifetime. Yeah, you got it right. Yeah.
And it's probably the best book that anybody who's going into business can read, because he took Disney from it was never a failing company, but it was failing based on
floundering
the way it had been.
Yeah.
And he did these amazing things with it. He bought Pixar, which was a competitor in the cartoons.
Yeah.
And because Disney had a great cartoon division, but it wasn't doing so well.
Yeah.
And then he bought, I don't know what the sequence is, but he ended up buying Marvel comic books.
Oh,
so
yes.
all of those,
the
all
Avengers.
Of those big time movies became Disney movies. And then maybe his biggest purchase was Fox.
Yes.
Fox Films. And for their library, and also for the films they owned. They own a bunch of great serial
platforms.
films.
Yeah. It's a wonderful book, and I'll remind my listeners, I have a great place in the Cars Yeah website called Guest Recommended Books, where I'll put this book that Tony's recommended. There's over 1,650 books that are listed now that you can find. I've made it really easy for you to click on them. All my inspiring automotive enthusiasts always have some wonderful books to recommend, including The Ride of a Lifetime. You should read this book. I've read it. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you're in any kind of business, it'll definitely give you some great ideas. All right, Tony, we're almost at the end of our talk here, but this next question can be a bit of a doozy. Today, I'm going to buy you a collector car. I'm going to buy you any cool collector car, fun car in the world. It doesn't matter who owns it or where it is. I'm going to park it in your garage. But here are the rules to my game, since I'm writing the check. You can't sell it to buy a bunch of other toys with. It's got to be a keeper. It's got to tick all the boxes. And I want you to drive it. No garage queens or dust collectors allowed here at Cars Yeah. But here's what makes it hard. You can either keep your Corvair, and I don't have to spend a dime on you today, or I'm going to buy you a car, and that means it's the only one cool collector car you can have to drive in those beautiful Topanga canyons. So what can I buy Tony Dow today?
A 300 SL Gull.
We're going to go to that. I kind of figured we already answered that question. I'll tell you something, Tony. I've had the pleasure of being in those cars. I've never driven the Going, but I've driven the Roadster version. And I'll tell you, that car is one of the most recommended cars by all of my automotive enthusiasts, people that are high-end collectors, people that have driven pretty much everything out there. They all say that that car ticks all the boxes. It's wonderful to drive around town. You get it on the highway. It's got power for the hills and so forth. And the Going, of course, is so iconic. So that I park the right car in your driveway, what color would you like that SL to be?
Oh, I think silver. I mean, I think that's iconic silver, yeah.
You picked a masterful car, my friend. This is something beautiful. It's going to cost me a dang pretty penny, though. I'm going to have to pull some coins out of the bank account here, but that's okay for you.
Well, you can have the Corvair.
Can I? Oh, well, thank you. You're the first one who's done something nice like that for me. Fireball said you're a really nice guy, so I believe him even more so now. Tony, you have taken us on a wonderful ride. You've taken me to my past. Just listening to you talk has brought back so many wonderful memories. You sound exactly the same you did back in those.
Do I really?
You do. It's the same thing. It's just bringing back a wonderful smile to my face and my youth. I want to thank you for putting smiles on all of our faces all these years with that TV show that you've done and all the work that you've done. It's fantastic. Before I let you go, though, would you offer me one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance about life before you rip off into the canyons in that 300 SL Going?
Okay. Well, I think patience is one of the good fundamental things that everybody should have, especially in today's world when things are getting more complex and actually don't work as well as some of the older things.
Yeah.
I get very frustrated with the programmers and everybody who have to fool around with a program that works great that I can use. Well, then it comes out with another one that I can't even figure out how to use.
I know.
And for what reason, So I think having patience and is a really important characteristic.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're a very patient man.
The coloring book's sort of interesting because in addition to the pages, which Fireball did a fantastic job on the illustrations, I did a little 2-paragraph explanation of what was going on during that time when that particular image was created. So anyway, it's a little different than a crayon coloring book. It's probably good for colored pencils and patience.
Nice segue. That's very nice. Well, I'll make sure I put links to how you can follow along with Tony, of course, on Facebook, and as well as a link I found to some of his artwork, his sculptures. I think you'll have a really nice time there. And of course, a shout out to our mutual friend, Fireball Tim, for connecting us today. Really nice of him to do that. You can find his coloring books at fireballtim.com. Also, I encourage you to follow him on his vlog. He does a wonderful daily vlog with his lovely wife, Kathy, which is really fun in Malibu there. And of course, his Facebook talks that you can join us weekdays every morning at 8 o'clock. Tony, thanks for spending some wonderful time with me today, for being so generous with your time and sharing your life with us today. It's been a delight to talk with you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.